I know only a handful of miles and a short drive separate the Sacramento Kings and the Golden State Warriors from one another, but can we even call this a rivalry? Neither team has been good while the other is good until now. So, what will it take for this to be a rivalry? Simply the playoff stage? Does this series need to go 6 or 7 games? Does there need to be some bad blood between these teams or bad blood between these fan bases? What will it take for Kings and Warriors to actually become a legitimate NBA rivalry? To answer and discuss that question, plus preview this Kings and Warriors series as a whole, I'm going to be joined by former Sacramento and Bay Area radio guy Kyle Madson, a good friend of mine, right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long and now all postseason long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use Locked On NBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. And while the Kings and Warriors are regional rivals, the only two teams in Northern California, and there's certainly been reasons for the fan bases not to like one another, or let's be honest, there's been more than enough reasons for Sacramento Kings fans to be jealous of the Golden State Warriors in a lot of ways. I think it's okay and it's fair to admit that, just like Golden State Warriors fans were more than jealous of the Sacramento Kings during their heyday in the late 90s and early 2000s. I wouldn't call this a rivalry at this point. There's regional ties and there's reasons for Kings and Warriors fans to kind of fire shots at each other or to make jokes about each other or things like that. But look, the Kings don't view the Warriors, or rather Kings fans don't view the Warriors the same way they view the Lakers. The Warriors and Warriors fans don't view the Sacramento Kings and Kings fans the same way they would view maybe the Boston Celtics now or the Cleveland Cavaliers back in the day with their rivalries that they had in the NBA Finals. So these teams have never clashed on a stage meaningful enough to where a rivalry was either created or even warranted. Does that change now that these two teams are meeting in the first round? Does it take the Sacramento Kings eliminating the Golden State Warriors, ending that dynasty in poetic terms, in order for that rivalry to be created? Does it take a chippiness, some moments of chippiness, Draymond Green maybe in his antics, pushing and shoving Domantas Sabonis a little bit, or De'Aaron Fox and Steph Curry jawing at one another? What does it take for this to become a rivalry? Or does it simply become a rivalry at the beginning of game one because of all of the how close both teams are, how involved the fan bases are? It's a question for you. It's a question that Kyle and I are going to discuss here at the beginning of our conversation. This is a good long conversation that I had with Kyle. I worked with Kyle for many years here in Sacramento at Sacktown Sports 1140 Radio. He worked for 95.7 The Game, the Bay Area radio station, home of the Warriors down there for a long time. Also does great work covering the San Francisco 49ers for like the Candlestick Chronicles podcast and for Niners Wire. So he's very plugged into Northern California sports, period. And he very much understands both the Kings and the Warriors and their fan bases. So I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Plenty to respond to. If you want to do that, you can on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Or if you're watching on YouTube, leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. But for now, please enjoy my conversation with my friend, Kyle Madson. The battle lines have been drawn. Northern California is split for the first time ever. Kings and Warriors, not just in the playoffs at the same time, but meeting in the playoffs, the opening round, and the Sacramento Kings have home court advantage. Many are saying that's not an advantage at all, given the Warrior fans in the Sacramento area. We'll have to wait and see. But joining me right now is a good friend of mine who provides a really unique perspective on this because he spent time working in Sacramento professionally in radio, spent a lot of time in the Bay Area working professionally, has a background as a Warriors fan and just Bay Area sports fan in general. So Kyle Madson understands the ins and outs and what's it like to be on both sides of this line in the sand. Kyle, Welcome back to Locked On Kings, my friend. It's been a while. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're as excited for this playoff series as everybody else is.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about it, but I also just wanted to unabashedly pull for the Kings, which I can't do now. I don't have it in my heart to do that. So that stinks. I was rooting hard for the Suns yesterday, so it'd be that Warriors Suns matchup. But here we are. It's I don't know, it's weird. The Kings and Warriors are good at the same time.
Right.
I don't fully know. It's not a rivalry, right? Because they've literally never, even the other night when the Warriors and Kings played, it was wow, this is a huge game. But then Memphis goes and kicks the crap out of the Bucks, and so a game doesn't matter. So Mike Brown sits all his guys, and it just, oh, hey, here's this super meaningful Kings Warriors game, maybe the first one ever, and it doesn't actually count. It's just a weird, I don't know, man.
So that's a very interesting way to start, because I think this is excellent for the league, first and foremost, to have a Northern California series that matters. Because if you look at the rivals for the Golden State Warriors and Sacramento Kings, I mean, for the Kings, it's always going to be the Los Angeles Lakers, or it has been, even if the Lakers are looking up going, leave us alone, you're a fly basically around our heads. You haven't done anything for 16 years. The Kings and Warriors, like you've said, have never been good at the same time. The Golden State Warriors have not been worried about any team really in California. They've been worried about whichever team in the East they're going to be facing in the NBA Finals, essentially, for the last handful of years, since 2014. Someone told me Steve Kerr's never lost a Western Conference playoff series, which is just crazy to think about considering. So what does it take for a rivalry to be born? Does it take this series and maybe some bad blood coming out in this series, or does it take one of these teams losing to the other? Does it take a passing of a torch from the Warriors to the Kings if the Kings win? Does it take the Kings getting embarrassed by the Warriors? And it's hey, settle down, kid. You're a fun story during the regular season. What does it take to get this rivalry actually to a place where both teams acknowledge, hey, we want to beat the crap out of this other team and we don't like them very much?
I don't know if the players will ever get there, but I think for the fan bases now, because I was pretty young when the Kings were last in the postseason, and all my friends were Kings fans, and here I am a Warriors fan, but I was okay, cool, the Kings are good. I didn't care that much. But now I think just meeting in a playoff series is a great start. That's how rivalries really get in and fester. But I think now it's up to, frankly, I think the ball's in the Warriors' court to continue to be competitive over the next 4 or 5 years, because I think the Kings are really well set up to be competitive and be a playoff team perennially for a while. It's the Warriors now that have to figure out, okay, how in the back end of the Curry, Clay, Draymond era, how do they continue to be competitive, and how do they continue to be in the postseason? So when they do match up with the Kings, it's not like it was, in the early 2000s, where the Kings are really good and the Warriors are struggling and trying to kind of figure out their way in the league. So I think that's what this is a great start, but now they've just both got to be good for a while and really let that line down 80 get drawn.
I feel like the venom in this series begins with, and I'm probably going to piss some Kings fans off with this,
Harrison Barnes.
Yes, absolutely. Harrison's the turncoat in Golden State. No, it begins with jealousy. There's just been jealousy for a long time of the success of the Golden State Warriors and how the Sacramento Kings have not been able to compete with the Warriors, that turned a franchise that nobody wanted to play for, the same way nobody wants to play for the Sacramento Kings, into a dynasty that attracted Kevin Durant, won a bunch of rings, yeah. But in addition to that, there have been comments made, like Ayesha Curry for the ESPYs, making the joke that Sacramento Arena is so hot because they don't have fans. And I mean, it's said in tongue in cheek. And then Draymond Green mentioning that it's hard to get up and play against teams like the Sacramento Kings. So comments have been made by players or people connected to players that could be jabs towards Sacramento, but I always took them as they were said by people that never really took the Sacramento Kings seriously. And that's where and you can provide perspective on this, because I know Steve Kerr, I know this team. I know they respect what the Sacramento Kings are doing. So there's no way they're rolling into game 1 or game 2. Even if Warrior fans are thinking, okay, let's start thinking about who the Kings are going to, or the Warriors are going to play in round 2 and round 3 and project their path back to the NBA finals. Nobody in Golden State on the team and in the organization's coming into Sacramento in game 1 and going, all right, this series is already decided.
No, I think they're in a spot where, just based on what Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr were saying last night, they're very much in a spot where, like, this regular season was so tumultuous for them. Like, don't get it twisted. This was not a Warriors regular season where they struggled because, just get to April. That's how it used to be. Like, last year they got off to that 18-2 start, and then between like the end of February and the end of March, they went like 6-19. They were not good. But then the final, they get healthy. They rattle off 5 straight wins to finish the year, and then they go on and they win the final. Like, I think that was a matter of like, we'll just get a stable. This year was not that. And so I don't think the Warriors are in a spot where they're able to look at any team, East, West, or otherwise, and go, oh, okay, let's just get past them, and then we'll really start. Like, especially when they're the 6 seed, the Kings are the 3 seed. They've been very good all season. I think the Warriors are now in a spot where it's like, okay, got to the playoffs, and now we have to figure out how to beat the Kings 4 times. Like, that's the mindset for them. I very much don't think there might be Warriors fans that are going, whatever, it's the Kings. But like, the Warriors know they won 11 road games all year. They know their defense is abysmal on the road all year. They know the Kings had a historically good offense. I don't think there's anybody in the Warriors locker room that's not taking this matchup seriously. I'd be shocked if there was.
You mentioned the road, how bad the Warriors have been on the road. And I understand, like Draymond mentioned on his podcast, one of the reasons why this series is ideal and the Warriors wanted to play the Kings, other than obvious reasons. Look, I'm not dumb. I'd rather play the Sacramento Kings than the Phoenix Suns any day based off of what's over there in Phoenix.
That's not shade at the Kings.
Not at all. Like, not at all. Not at all. Like, and even Mike Brown was asked about it. Mike said, yeah, I'd want to play us too. We have to prove it in the playoffs. So like, that's not shade at all. I understand that. But one of the things that Draymond mentioned is like travel, right? It's only an hour and a half, 2-hour bus ride compared to changing time zones and hopping on a plane and going back and forth. And
right.
And I know that's been a conversation of travel miles for the Warriors in a playoff series or in playoffs period in the past. But if there's a team that you want to play that helps make your home or your road court disadvantage as light as possible, it's the Sacramento Kings because of how close they are by proxy and how many Warrior fans are going to travel. I push back a little bit at this idea that Golden State Warrior fans are just going to take over the Golden One Center. I know there are a lot of Warrior fans here in Sacramento. Anytime there's a Kings Warriors game or a Kings Lakers game, or hell, even this season, a Kings Celtics game, there are a lot of opposing fans in the building. I get it. I think it kind of adds to the atmosphere. I'm personally okay with it. I think it's kind of fun. But I think a lot is being made about how Warrior fans are going to simply come in. Gilbert Arenas was even talking about this. Warrior fans are going to come in and turn the Golden One Center into the Chase Center, but Sacramento Kings fans don't have cars and are incapable of going to Chase Center. Like, I think it's going to be, you're going to see a lot of opposing fans in every building, and that's just going to add to the environment.
And I think there are Kings fans who have maybe not gone to a game who are like, this is the one I'm going to go. Like, I'm making sure I'm in the building for this. This is not a scenario where, I mean, maybe, I don't know. I think it's down to like the person. Like, I think everybody has a price point, right?
Right.
Where if somebody says, hey, here's $1,000 for the ticket that you got for $150, like, they're going to be like, okay, fine. I'll go watch at a bar and spend my money. But I can't imagine after 16 years that there's going to be a bunch of Kings fans eager to sell their tickets. And vice versa. I don't know if Warriors fans after this run, how many are going to want to, and you mentioned it, there's some in Sacramento, but I don't know how many people are going to want to travel up from the Bay Area to Sacramento to go to a game when they could, buy a ticket down at Chase. So I think that whole thing's been overblown. I think that game the other night, it was loud for Golden State, but I think that was very much because Kings fans kind of saw the writing on the wall, and the team kind of punted that game, and you're just not going to bring the energy when like the playoff, you've clinched the playoffs, and you're going to be the 3 seed. Like the energy is just not the same. So long story short, Golden One's going to be wild, and I don't think it's going to be because it's overrun with Warriors fans. I don't see that happening.
When you talk about the struggle of the Golden State Warriors, though, it goes deeper than the amount of fans that you have in an opposing building or how many fans are cheering for you versus against you. Like the Golden State Warriors were so good at home and so bad on the road that it was deeper than just fans in the building, right? What was it that made the Warriors so bad on the road and so great at home that the Kings should either be trying to take advantage of, or in the case of playing in Chase Center, maybe be a little concerned about?
So this is the thing that, so I think it was Tim Kawakami from The Athletic posited that this Warriors team just didn't have the mental makeup to deal with opposing crowds when the opposing team would go on a run. It's like, I just don't buy that, dude, because Jordan Poole was in the finals last year. Steph, Clay, and Draymond, we know. I'm Dante DiVincenzo. I don't see him being a guy that's like, oh no, the crowd. Like, he's played in big games. He played in college with the Bucks. Like, I just don't. So I don't necessarily buy that. Like, I get, okay, Jonathan Kuminga maybe, and Anthony Lamb. He just shouldn't have been playing. He's just not an NBA player. But check this out. And I think this goes to one of the things that we talk about on the radio is like the connectivity of the Warriors and how they used to just be on a string all the time. And offensively, they were fine on the road this year. They were, where are we at? Hang on. I had the splits and now they're gone. Okay. So offensively, they were a little worse on the road, but defensively is where the problem comes in. And this is where I think the Kings present such a difficult matchup for them, because I know the Kings haven't been awesome at home, but they can shoot the heck out of the basketball. The Warriors allowed 111.7 points per game at home and 122.5 per game on the road. 11 points.
That's nuts.
Almost 11 points. Team shot 33% from 3 at Chase Center. 39.7% from 3 when the Warriors were on the road. That's an unbelievable split. And I think it goes to just a lack of focus on the road, a lack of that connectivity, whether it was because they were changing lineups or because they had to play players like Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome for a lot of the year, where it's like, these are two-way guys. They maxed out the amount of games they could play two-way guys. And then they had to convert Anthony Lamb to a real contract. And he's just, like I said, not an NBA player. So I think that's part of it. And I think part of it is just kind of a general malaise. But there's something at the core of this team that caused them to struggle on the road this year. I don't think it's talent. I don't think it's road environment. I think there's just something about the chemistry of the team that gets altered when they go on the road.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets to all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you, with killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. So many of you have reached out to me and asked me about Kings playoff tickets and the resale market and things like that. Game Time is making you the guarantee that when it comes to last-minute ticket purchases, maybe the day of, Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, you decide, you know what, I got to be there for Kings Warriors inside the Golden One Center. If it's a last-minute ticket, Game Time will have the best available prices, best deals for you. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You can get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeemable code LOCKEDONNBA to get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. When the Kings lost to the San Antonio Spurs, after the game, Mike Brown called his guys out a little bit. And one of the things we asked Mike is, like, why does this team get up and play defense on the road, but at home they don't? Because those numbers that you're throwing out, it's almost the opposite for the Kings in a lot of ways. Not nearly as drastic, but the Kings, I think, give up 116 points per game on the road and over 120 or around 120 at home. And one of the things Mike said was, he says, like, this team, they take it on themselves. Like, they create their own energy and they get up and they like being kind of that spoiler for opposing crowds. Like, they like to create their own energy and they step up in those moments. Like, okay, we got to do it ourselves. We can't rely on the crowd. But when they come and play in Sacramento, they almost relax a little bit and allow the energy of the crowd to affect how they play offensively, but not defensively, to where they feel like, okay, we can just outscore anybody because we're home and this is our gym. Right. And that's kind of led to some struggles. So the way that, I mean, the Kings have been one of the biggest surprises to me this season is just how good they have been on the road. That being said, how do I take what they've done on the road and translate to a playoff series? The best way that I've been able to do it for myself is, okay, the Kings are good enough on the road to win one important playoff game in Golden State, I think. That still means you have to handle home court. You have to win at home court. So is this series really as simple as the Kings are going to win or lose this series inside the Golden One Center? Like, if they drop games in the Golden One Center, if they lose on their home floor, even with the amount of Warrior fans that are in the building regardless, then they have no shot. Because I think that's fair to say. I don't think there's any way the Kings are knocking off the Warriors in the Chase Center more than a couple times, and 2 seems generous.
Yeah, I would be shocked if the Kings went into Chase and won twice. I'd be really surprised. On that same hand, I'd be shocked if the Warriors went into Golden One and won twice. So that's, I think there's going to be a swing game there on the road. And you mentioned the Warriors have never lost a Western Conference series under Steve Kerr. They've also never had a series where they haven't won a road game under Steve Kerr, which is nuts.
Yeah.
But and it's been a different iteration of the Warriors, though. And that's kind of where my question marks come in. I think there's a level of, like, playoff experience that they have that's going to kind of matter here. But I also wonder, like, okay, when they do flip that playoff switch, is the level that they're going to get to, is that going to be enough to even beat Sacramento, much less, people, like, because the scope that the Warriors get viewed through is like, okay, what do they have to do to contend for a championship? Because that's just what they've been for the last 8 years, right? But I think this year and how good the Kings have been, it's like, forget a championship. Like, how do you get through round one? And I know the Warriors are, like, heavy favorites. It's the value on the Kings in the betting market. I don't know if you ever get into that on this podcast, is nuts.
Yes.
To win $100 on the Kings winning the series, you have to bet $22.50. To win $100 on the Warriors winning the series, you have to bet $265.
Holy moly.
Like, that's outrageous, right? For a 3-6 matchup. So I'm with you, man. I think that there's going to be one game at Golden One or one game at Chase, and that's going to wind up deciding, one game where the home team slips up.
Yep.
I think that's what's going to ultimately swing the series. I just don't, it's just hard to break this Warriors team down because there's always that sense of, okay, I know everything that they did this year. And I know logically I cannot line up how they go beat the Kings 4 times out of 7. But then I said this last year too. So there might be a level in there that they can get to that I just don't see. But have a hard time after watching everything we saw this year. I have a hard time seeing them going into Golden One and winning once, much less twice.
Let's stick with the odds conversation a little bit because it doesn't surprise me at all that the Warriors are heavy favorites. I think they should be. Look, it's the juggernaut dynasty against this team that's never been there before and that nobody knows a lot about, that's untested and unproven. So I get that. Like, that doesn't surprise me at all. That's not insulting to me. But I'm going to ask you to kind of set your own odds here or for something different. Like, are the odds higher for this game to end in a sweep or gentleman's sweep, or for it to go 6 or 7 games? I feel like the series is going deep.
Yeah, I don't think either team's winning in 4 or 5. I would no, this goes 6 or 7. And if you're the Kings and you can get it to 7, where you have game 7 on your home court against a team that won 11 road games all year, like that's a really good spot to be in. And that's why the Vegas odds are so interesting to me, because it's also heavily juiced towards the Warriors winning the series by more than a game and a half, which means the Warriors would have to win in 6, because it's 4 games to 2. Yeah. And that's just like, man, that means they win 2 at Golden One. Like, that's, I don't know, man. I have a really hard time seeing that. I think this goes 7.
Is all the pressure on the Warriors, or the majority of the pressure on the Warriors in this series?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Especially now, because like Gary Payton II's played really well. Like, he's just fit right back in. And Klay Thompson is playing at a level that I never thought he would reach ever again. Steph Curry's locked in. They're getting Andrew Wiggins back. And there's that whole like stat of the Curry, Thompson, Looney, Green, Wiggins lineup is like leading the league in net rating, but they played like 14 minutes together. It's a silly stat, but I'm like, that's all fine. But I think it puts a ton of pressure on Golden State to now prove that, hey, you know what, they can still do it. They can still flip that switch. And I don't think anybody would begrudge them if they didn't, right? Like, oh no, you didn't go back to back. But there's definitely at least some pressure to get out of the first round.
I'll tell you the two things, and I'm not trying to speak for Kings fans, but I think the two most common things that scare the Sacramento Kings most, and I don't think the Kings team is afraid of anybody. I don't think they have to be afraid of anybody. They control themselves very much. Yeah. And it's if they shoot the ball as well as they're capable of shooting the ball, they're going to be difficult for anybody to beat. But from a Kings fan perspective, from my perspective, the two things that scare me the most about the Warriors are, one, their abundance of experience. Like, if this game gets down to the wire, gets down in the trenches, Warriors have been there before, Kings haven't, and you'll just see how they handle those moments, whether it's on the road or at home. Number one. Number two is Steph Curry. I mean, Steph Curry literally put that team on his back and dragged him to a championship last year. Like, Steph is capable of beating the Sacramento Kings by himself if he needs to get to that level. So I ask that to ask this from the Warrior perspective. Like, what is it about the Sacramento Kings? And it could be as simple as like Fox and Sabonis are really good, or is there anything about the Kings or anything specific with the Kings that's like, that should terrify the Warriors or frighten the Warriors in this series?
Yeah, Domas for sure, just because the Warriors are not big, and it's Draymond Green and it is Kevon Looney. Like, those are their two guys down low. They'll play Kuminga at the 5 sometimes, but dude, Domas would just eat Kuminga for breakfast. Like, it's just that's easy work for him. That's going to be a problem for Golden State for sure, and I'm kind of interested to see, like, this is not, I'm not trying to throw shade at De'Aaron Fox. I just think the Warriors are going to, in big spots, sell out to stop him. Like, they will throw Andrew Wiggins on him full court, and Gary Payton II and Dante DiVincenzo, and they'll throw doubles at him. They'll get the ball out of his hands. And I think the Warriors are going to make other guys take big shots. Not to say that Kevin Huerter or Keegan Murray or whoever it is can't hit them. Trey Lyles, I know your guy. But I think the Warriors are going to be very scared of De'Aaron Fox, and I think that's going to play out in how they go about defending him. And I think you're going to see a lot of in any key spot, it's going to be like, get the ball out of number 5's hands and make the offense go through somebody else on the perimeter.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the number one way to play daily fantasy sports. And going into this Kings Warriors series, Prize Picks is going to be a lot of fun. The way Prize Picks works, you pick 2 to 5 players and the over or under on their projected scoring total. So let's say we're going into game 1 and you take the over on De'Aaron Fox scoring 17.5 points, the over on Steph Curry scoring 22.5 points, and the under on Draymond Green scoring 8 points. Yeah, that was a little bit of a shot. Well, if you get all of those right, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes the NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA. You could have done it with the Masters that just wrapped up and all the other majors. Combat sports like MMA, boxing, even disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. FanDuel is everywhere. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They offer safe and fast withdrawals and are currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So you deposit $100, you get $100, you deposit $50, you get $50. It's more money for you to make even more money and win on Prize Picks. Don't forget to use promo code Locked On. Sign up for instant deposit match up to $100 at prizepicks.com. We'll wrap up with the cheesy podcast / radio exercise, which is basically a fill in the blank. We'll start with the Warriors. The Warriors win the series if
Andrew Wiggins is 75% of himself. Because I think his length and what he provides for them on offense, because right now one of the Warriors' biggest problems is their defense lineup is Jonathan Kuminga, not a very, he can put the ball in the bucket, but you can play off of him on the perimeter. And it's like, hey, if you're going to hit 4 of 7 from 3, then more power to you, right? Draymond Green, who we all know can't shoot. Gary Payton II, who's another guy okay, he'll cash a corner 3, but you're okay with him taking it. And that's been their defense first line. And then it's Dante and Steph. So that lineup has had a really hard time scoring. Whereas if you now throw Andrew Wiggins in there instead of Jonathan Kuminga, well, now there's another guy who can rebound, who can take a guy off the dribble, he can shoot it a little bit. So I think if Andrew Wiggins is playing, especially defensively, and playing well, where if he gets matched up on Sabonis, it's not, hey, he's going to back him down and it's an easy bucket. I think the Warriors have a very, very good chance to win the series.
And then vice versa, the Sacramento Kings will win the series if
their role players hit shots. I think that's because Golden State, one thing they're very good at over the course of a series is just making teams uncomfortable or play left-handed or however you want to, whatever metaphor you want to use. But the Kings, I think, are built really well where it's okay, great. You want Kevin Huerter taking a shot? Okay. Keegan Murray, the best rookie 3-point shooter ever. Okay. They have players who can hit shots. And if they do, I don't know how the Warriors consistently get stops.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Kyle. This is not the opponent that I wanted for the Sacramento Kings. It's not the series that I wanted for multiple reasons. But now that it's happened, I'm so excited for this. From an NBA standpoint, it's just going to be so much fun.
I'm interested in this from your perspective because I watch the Warriors every night, and I'm the ultimate pessimist. I see all the flaws, more than I see all the positives. And they scored 157 points yesterday against whatever the hell team the Blazers are rolling out right now. The 5 lucky fans who got to play. And I don't no disrespect to those guys. I'm joking. But
we know what they are. We know what's happening.
Yeah. They Shaedon Sharp's really good and Trendon Watford, shout out. But they scored 157 points. And they turnover in the fourth quarter. And I'm damn it. I'm getting see, they can't hang on to the basketball. No, I'm interested in your perspective on this because I think that you said, this isn't the matchup you wanted for the Kings, but isn't it? just in a vacuum, the Warriors were the worst team of the teams that they could possibly play, I think. Like in a 2023 vacuum.
I think, to me, it was the LA Clippers because for a couple of reasons. One, the Kings just seemingly always match up well against the Clippers, number one. Number two is Paul George's injury, which helps lighten the blow a little bit. Number three is out of the Warriors, Lakers, and Clippers, the Clippers are going to have the fewest amount of fans that are coming into the Golden One Center, which also had a thing to do with it too. I also think the Sacramento Kings took the best shot that the Clippers offense could throw at them, and they outscored them 176 to 175 or whatever that final score was in Los Angeles. The Kings were dead in that game in two different periods of time where they should not have come back. They should have folded and lost, and they came back and either tied it or won the freaking game. So, like, to me, it was the Los Angeles Clippers for all those reasons. Again, it is the experience of the Golden State Warriors that worries me. Like, this team has been there before. This team can go down 0-2 and not panic.
Yeah.
I don't know how the Sacramento Kings are going to respond if they go down 0-2. They might surprise me. That's what's most exciting about this series in a lot of ways. And I know Kings fans want this team to capitalize right now off of, hey, we're the third seed. We might never get here again. Like, try and win right now. Of course, the Kings are going to try and win right now. Mike Brown in that locker room.
Not going to rest guys.
Right. They're only preaching winning a championship, of course. But this is such a blank canvas with this team. Like, I've always thought once De'Aaron Fox gets to this stage, that's where we're going to see him take his game to the next level. Prove it. Domantas Sabonis, prove it. Like, is this supporting cast around them as good as we think, or has Monty McNair got work to do in the playoffs or in the offseason? Or is this going to be something, if we compare everything to the late 90s and early 2000s like we always do, when the Kings finally made it into the playoffs at the beginning of the Chris Webber kind of dynasty, the Utah Jazz kicked their ass. It was like, okay, but you saw the Kings won one of those games or a couple of those games, and you're like, okay, they belong here. And the next year they built upon it. So will the Kings lose to the Warriors in 6 games, but show they belong here and it's their time now? Like, it's just a blank canvas. So that's what's exciting to me is I don't think there's any way the Kings get swept. I don't think there's any way the Kings really fall flat on their face. If they're going to lose to the Golden State Warriors, it's because, one, the Kings aren't hitting shots, and two, the Warriors have been there before and are comfortable in the moments where the Kings aren't tested yet. That's where I think this series is going to be decided. If the Kings can step up in those moments, and if the Kings can shoot at their historic rate that they're capable of shooting, they can beat the Warriors at their own game. That's where I like the idea of, okay, Warriors try and outscore the Kings. Okay, anybody try and outscore the Kings, because the Kings have taken the best defenses that the Western Conference has thrown at them this season and turned them into the worst statistically. So this team is, I don't think, that's why I say this team shouldn't be afraid of anybody. They should be afraid of their consistency and should be afraid of when they're in the trenches, backs against the wall, where nobody in the crowd or nobody on the bench can help you. De'Aaron Fox, there's 10 seconds left. You've been clutch all year long. Hit this big bucket on this big stage or you're eliminated. How do you step up in that moment?
That's the key here, is like when the experience gets brought up. I heard somebody on the radio in Sacramento say that it's not like the Kings are going to forget how to play basketball. And that's true. The Kings aren't going to go, it's not going to be like tip off game 1 and the Kings are like, what do we do now? How do we dribble?
Oh God.
But like, it's 110 to 110 with 3.5 minutes left. Can you continue to execute? When Keegan Murray, the rookie, catches it on the wing, does he just let it fly like normal? Or is it now all of a sudden, oh, this is a playoff game. We're tied 1-1 and we're on the road. Am I supposed to be taking the shot? Like, there's just little things that I think happen over the course of a series, and maybe it'll be fine. But that's where I think the playoff factor and the like playoff experience thing comes in. I definitely don't think, just kind of roundabout point, I'm with you. I don't think there's any way that the Warriors just steamroll Sacramento and it's like, oh wow, that Kings team was fraudulent. Like, that's just not. No, they're too good.
I think this is a very unique series in the sense that both teams can showcase still a lot, where the Golden State Warriors can show everybody, hey, we're still very much defending champs and still a threat. And the Sacramento Kings can open a lot of eyes and say, we weren't just a feel-good story. So it's fun. I can't wait. I can't wait for game 1 on Saturday. I know the environment is going to be crazy. I can't wait for games 3 and 4 in Chase Center. Just, I mean, from a Kings fan perspective, just the idea of knowing you're guaranteed 4 games against the Golden State Warriors, put up or shut up. Like, it's nirvana. It's literally basketball nirvana in so many ways.
You made it.
we made it.
They did it.
Participation trophy. No, and their sights are set for farther. Well, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of drama. It'll be interesting to see when this series is over and done with, if there's a true rivalry or not. I think if there is, that means the series went well for whatever result. So we'll have to wait and see with that. But Kyle, you do such an amazing job with all the coverage that you provide. Of course, not just on the Warriors side of things, but if you're a 49ers fan too, the work that he does over on the Candlestick Chronicles podcast with Chris Biederman, the work that you do on Niners Wire and everything like that too. So keep up all that excellent work. And one of these days we'll hopefully see you in Sacramento or in Golden State for one of these games during this series. I hope I get the chance to do that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how my life goes.
Kyle, I appreciate you, man. Big thank you to Kyle for joining me here on the Locked On Kings podcast. I thought we were pretty cordial. I didn't know if that conversation was going to get to a point where we were throwing verbal fisticuffs at one another, with Kyle's background as a Warriors fan, my background as a Sacramento Kings fan. But again, Kyle really understands both sides. He understands both fan bases, understands both teams. And clearly he has a lot of respect for what the Sacramento Kings are doing, which I think more people should have respect for what the Kings are doing, even if the expectation, again, like I've said and been consistent with, should be that the Warriors will win the series. That might be the expectation. That might be what the betting odds are saying, but the Kings have defied expectations all season long. It shouldn't surprise anybody if they're able to do it in this series. I have more previews coming. I'm going to be doing a crossover episode with Cyrus from the Locked On Warriors podcast. Maybe that's where the verbal fisticuffs will really begin, because I know Cyrus has a lot of confidence in these Warriors against the Kings and might be taking the Kings for granted or undermining the Kings in a lot of ways. So we'll have that coming for you. I'll have more guests and more preview shows building all the way up to Saturday's Kings and Warriors playoff game 1. I cannot wait for that. Thank you for your support all regular season long. I'm so excited to be able to cover playoff basketball with you here on the Locked On Kings podcast. And for those of you who are new, maybe just tuning in for the first time, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. I apologize about the voice a little bit, getting over a cough that my son gave me, but I'm getting it out of the way in time so we don't have to worry about any illnesses or anything like that for Kings and Warriors and the playoffs beginning here in just a handful of days. I'm already an impatient person. I'm staring at the calendar, staring at the clock, just counting it down. Can't wait to be in the Golden One Center. And I know so many of you are either going to be inside the Golden One Center, outside the Golden One Center, in downtown in general, watching from home. It's going to be incredible. And I'm so thankful to have this platform, so thankful to be able to cover playoff basketball in Sacramento for the first time in my career. It's going to be an absolute blast. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.